All right. Let's see if we can at least make it through a couple of questions this time around. Oh man. So I got a little bit too excited with doing changes last night, I think. We're now back to our regularly scheduled programming. Well, hopefully, right? It might crash on us again pretty soon. Hopefully not. I think I just jinxed it as well, so I'm not doing myself any favors in this one either. When cocoa? Every night I drink cocoa. But movie? Probably not soon. All right. Let's see if we can at least make it to like a couple of minutes. I think we should be fine. I reverted to like some older settings that I changed, so I think we should be good now. Here's open. I'm so sorry for all the hiccups, people. I'm so sorry. I need to do proper testing before I do this shit. But hey, just keep tweaking and keep working on it, right? Keep improving. We don't usually have snow, but now we have. Oh, that's awesome, bikes. That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's been like 3 years since we had snow in Berlin. Well, we've been living here for like 2.5, so that's what other people have been saying. Yeah, but I would love like a really nice and thick pack of snow though, where you can really get a nice crunch going, right? Wish I could send you some snow. Man, yeah, if we didn't have the lockdown here, like the restriction of movement, right? Where we can't go out of Berlin for like 15 kilometers. It would have been awesome to just come over. We probably would have done something like that. Five centimeters. Look, that's a good crunch. I would love to have 5 centimeters here. Oh, that's what you were talking about when you said you were having crunch last week. Yeah, I think people got confused because I was talking about crunch in our community. And I didn't really clarify that it was about snow. So I was talking about like having some really good crunch. And I think some people got confused by talking about game dev crunch. No, I don't wanna be crunching the entire day. I want that nice juicy snow crunch, man. Oh, let me do a last thing. Need to log in again on Twitch. Do. Because yeah, we had like a little bit of crunch like a week ago, but that was it. It's kind of unfortunate. But well, we can. Yeah, I would love to just go somewhere with like a thick pack of snow. Let's have a look. So Hey, morning, Fran. How's it going? Just setting up some final stuff on my end, and then we can dive into some questions. Hopefully the snow lasts more than a day. Yeah, I hope so too. Just enjoy it while it lasts. Just go out for frequent walks. Try to make the most of it. That's what we did as well. Like as soon as we had break, like lunch break, we were like, fuck it, let's go out. Let's go for a long walk. Just enjoy it. All right. I think we're good to go, right? I'm gonna dive into some questions. I think we should be good to go. Okay. So, first question from Louis Mesquita. Have you ever told someone else, like close to you, about a game you're working on under NDA? No. Not really. Not anything that's under NDA. Not good friends or anything like that. Obviously, working from home now, I think that was also the discussion that was brought up in the community. Working from home now, I mean, my girlfriend is right next to me. Like, there's no way that I don't even have the space for like a separate room, even if I wanted to. So she's she can look at what I'm working on, basically. But yeah, other than that, like, some companies are like really strict, right? Like really strict that you have to work in like an enclosed space and all that stuff, apparently, which I also didn't really expect, but apparently that happens. I'm trying to be a little bit cautious about it, right? Like when there is some, like, when I'm not working in the editor, or there is like a presentation going on that features like heavily NDA stuff, then I'll close the blinds just to make sure that no one's watching. But during the day, no, not really. No special precautions or anything like that. But yeah, telling someone else about it, like except for my girlfriend, I'll just stick to the NDA. I don't really tell like anyone that isn't a part of Ubisoft about the stuff that we're working on. It's a good question though. I just err on the side of caution. Like you never know, right? I've never lost friends out of like a fight or something like that. But like I could imagine it happening maybe to some other people where imagine you tell like your good friend at that time, and then there's like a horrible thing that happens between the two of you, and then they go out and like leak it. I mean, that would be like a really dick move to do it. But I don't know, could happen too. Could happen. So yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, not really anything that I can add to that, I think. It's just the working from home situation makes it so much more interesting than before, right? Because I mean, there's no good way of like shielding the people that you live with, except if you have like separate spaces. But if you live in like an apartment situation, like the space is often limited, right? So yeah, good question, Louis. Thanks for asking it. Next question from Tim Gross. Do you think it's necessary to have a solid understanding of how the sub-D workflow works, even though you don't use it that often? Like, is there a set of skills that you should have, and what would you consider those skills to be? That's also a really good question. But I mean, if we look at my own skill set, like if we're talking about environment art, proper sub D workflow, like a basic understanding is good enough. Like knowing where to spend your polys, like knowing how to create like at least a clean geometry for baking, right? Especially when it comes to like sub D high poly creation, that's definitely like a must. Because else you're gonna have baking artifacts. But I mean, when you look at my stuff that I was doing in the beginning, I didn't really have like a thorough understanding of that myself. Is there a set of skills that you should have, and what would you consider those skills to be? Yeah, so as I mentioned, like good understanding of topology, like where to spend your polys that you're actually putting into your model for the low poly, right? And then also how to create that clean topology for the high poly so that you get a clean bake. What else? This is more going into baking, right? How to use what is it, like floating decals, floating geometry for baking. That's also a big one. Where to use it, how to use it, how to bake it down. The workflow that now people are familiar with in Marmoset with like the skew painting. If you have like bolts on flat surfaces, how to get like clean bakes from them. That used to be done. It's been a while since I've done any like hard surface baking myself. That used to be done by 2 bakes, one with normalized normalized vertices, and then one without. Is that right? Oh god, it's been so long. So you do like an average bake, which gives you like all the nice edges, and then a non-average bake, which just like projects everything flat down onto the surface. And then what you would do is blend between the two. You would mask like all the stuff that you want flat from the non-average bake, and then add that onto the average bake. And before Marmoset and all that stuff came out, that was like a really manual process. We did that with just combining the layers in Photoshop and just masking them out. Yeah, for greebles you would do that. Yeah. Exactly. Well, yeah, it depends if you... Yeah, if you want to have greebles on top of like in your high poly for like a low poly bake. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just so accustomed with already thinking about greebles in like a tileable way, where it's just like, oh, that's a separate texture, and I can just apply that to wherever I want greebles. But if you want like specific high quality or like high frequency detail on your mesh, yeah, that's right. You will need to apply that same technique for that. So coming back to the first part of your question, Tim, do I personally think that it's necessary to have like a solid understanding of how sub-D workflows work? I would say no, because there's always stuff that you can improve on that. I think in the beginning it's really important to understand the workflow in general, like how to get from like nothing to like your final end product, like the weapon, for example, right? And make that look good. Because the sub-D workflow and how to get like optimized like nice baking results, I mean, you're gonna encounter that anyway to a certain degree, right? But there's always stuff that you can optimize or like do differently there. And I would say if you look at the larger picture when creating a gun, if you have a couple of baking issues that you can, oh god, you can clean up in a different way, then that's also right. I mean, especially if you're starting out, as long as you understand the basics of it, feel like I'm giving some wrong advice here, but even though you don't use it that often, because yeah, it's like you said, right? It's no. I was thinking about saying it, but I was like, maybe not. Even though, well, if we're honest, like I did that stuff in the beginning as well. But here's the thing, like the tools are so much more advanced than what we worked with in the beginning. And this is I'm talking about like I'm a fucking dinosaur, right? But that's like 6 years ago. But we didn't have like the skew map painting. We didn't have all that stuff. I was baking in XNormal, or at the time when that came out in Nald, I was using that because that was way more intuitive than an XNormal. Because at that time we didn't use Substance yet. We were using Dedo and Endo. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. But yeah, I would say it's always the most important thing is always just the end result, right? Like if you make a gun look good and then you know the steps how you got there and you know what you're doing, that's all they're looking for. Like all the more technical stuff, you probably need to adapt to like a new workflow in the company anyway. So yeah, that's also another factor that comes into it, right? Like say I don't know what it would be in terms of weapon art. I'm not too familiar with that workflow, right? But let's say in terms of environment art, you get into an industry or like into a company and you're in this case you're only trained with like high to low poly, but then you start getting familiar with trim sheets. That's like a totally different workflow. I mean, that was also the case for me. I didn't know trim sheets when I got into the industry. I think now it's becoming it's more and more important, right? But yeah, there's always going to be stuff like that. There's always going to be technical technical or workflow improvements that are going to happen when you join the industry anyway. So I would say focus on the end result, make it look good, and just understand what you're working on too. But it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be like a top expert in that field already. I hope that helps, Tim. I know that I might not be the best one to ask that, right? Because I'm not really hard surface specifically, and I barely do any sub-D modeling myself. So I hope it helps. Oh, and also, thanks for the resub, man. Which one do you think is more important? Do you think it varies by studio? What are you talking about, Ryan? Are you talking about high to low poly workflow versus trim sheets, or? Technical knowledge vs artistic knowledge. Oh, artistic, for sure. If you're an artist, artistic knowledge. All the artistic fundamentals are way more difficult to teach than all the technical knowledge. Because technical knowledge is always changing, it's always evolving, it's always like something new. And technical knowledge is, like you said, it also depends by the studio, right? So you might be getting in to like one studio that requires like a different it's not going to be completely different, right? There's going to be a common ground there. Like there might be specific technical knowledge that you need to pick up upon because they use like a new workflow or something else. But the artistic knowledge, like the use of composition, the use of color, the use of shapes, the use of distribution of detail, like how many details you put into like a section where you want to put more importance on compared to other sections where you want to where it's just like a thoroughfare or like a hallway or something like that. Talking about games, right? It's all that kind of knowledge that is, if you already have that going in, is going to give you like a huge boon, because you can see that in your work too. Yeah, good question, man. I'm gonna add that. I'm gonna add that to the list, right? Because I don't want to dive into it too deep. I want to finish off the questions that we have in the Notion first, or like from the channel. Oh, by the way, if you're new in chat and this is your first time joining, feel free to just drop any questions in the chat, and we'll get to them like after we've done the questions for the community. Let's dive into the next one. The next one is from Leon. Last year, we've seen a lot of stylized environment art with techniques to achieve a more painterly look, becoming more widely known, and they are proving to be very popular. In most AAA games, on the other hand, we still see a hyper-realistic style being preferred. Do you think that there will be a trend or shift towards more stylized games in AAA in the coming years? Yeah, that's an interesting question, right? Huh. That's an interesting question. Because I don't think it's really gonna change, or I don't think there's gonna be a massive shift. Even though we see like a slow shift happening, right? Where you have games that try to go a little bit more towards like what you call stylized. Especially from the bigger companies. Like I'm thinking about Immortals Phoenix Rising. Is that the name of the game that recently came out? And then Hyperscape also has like a more stylized look to it. So I think there's definitely the possibilities are becoming more interesting. And I think also you can get away with more when it comes to the art direction of those games. I think it's more flexible, and it lends itself to maybe even have like smaller teams working on it, because I would assume that there's more reuse, the materials don't take too many iterations, and the art style is usually more forgiving than like hyperrealism or like hyperrealism or realistic. So yeah, it's a good question. I would love to see more of that though. I think even in like the AAA sphere, it's fairly underutilized, and we've seen, like I said in the beginning, we've seen like a little bit of a shift to that. With Valorant is probably also one that comes to mind. So yeah, that's an interesting one. I would love to see it though. I'd love to see it. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's like more to that. I'll need to think about that one. What do you guys think? Do you think that it's gonna be that stylized games are gonna be more prevalent in like the AAA field in the coming years? I think that a lot of companies pick stylized art because you can reach a broader audience. Riot tries to make their art extremely optimized so even toasters can play it. Yeah, that's also a really good point. I thought about that before. Because that is exactly it, right? They have, when it comes to those competitive games, they are focusing on like a high frame rate and minimal visual clutter as well. So you can, it's more focused on like the actual gameplay, the actual level design, than the environment art itself, like making things pretty. It's functional art, I would say. It doesn't mean that the game doesn't look great, but it is more catered towards functionality. So yeah, that's a really good point, Ryan. Make their art extremely optimized so even tourists can play it. Yeah, because that's also a big thing, right? Like the broader audience and like the bigger player base, especially for competitive games. Because if we're talking about that specific segment, that's always going to be a thing. Like if you're looking for to break through in the competitive market, you're aiming for the biggest audience ever, because then the bigger the potential audience, the bigger the player base, and the longevity of that game usually ties together with a broader audience too, because so many people are playing it. Yeah, and then you can also compare it from the other side, right? If you look at PUBG, for example, which is also a competitive game, it was more realistic, but it also ran really horribly. So I think that's a really good point. I mean, that's not only due to the art style, it's also due to the choices that they make, right? And not proper profiling and all that stuff in the case of PUBG. I personally don't think that the big companies that already established realistic looking franchises will change much. Oh no, that's for sure. Like they're not gonna switch like an Assassin's Creed to like a stylized thing, because I think it would also be a waste, sorta, to just waste all those resources that you have put in or that are readily available for an Assassin's Creed in this case, and then have to change them all, like redo them all in art style, and then also probably also change like art director, right? Because then at that point that art director is so familiar with that franchise and so familiar with the style that they want to go for, or like the settings and all that stuff, that I don't know, they might even have to switch it, or that he might be less interested in it, like he or she, right? Also, the big AAA companies are the only ones who have the resources to really pull realistic style, so they already have a unique selling point in that. But yeah, it's interesting that multiplayer games tend to be more stylized than single player ones. Yeah. The big AAA companies are the only ones who have the resources to really pull realistic style. I think that's slowly but surely changing though. With assets on the marketplace, Quixel mega scans like coming in, I think it's gonna become more and more available. But it's more of a question like, why would you want to do it, right? If you're like an indie studio, for example, and you have like all the choice in the world, like why would you stick to like a realistic style? Because you can make something like really charming, really unique, instead of sticking to realism. I mean, this is also my artistic opinion about it, right? Like artistic opinions are going to vary from people to people, but if I were to make like an indie game with like a small group, I would pick something that's like really out there, like something, try to invent something that has never seen before when it comes to art. I think that's will cost more than the production, the custom assets. That's also a good point, Christian. Let's have a think about that. I don't know about that actually. I think once the art direction is established, and you're still going to be working with outsourced studios, like I'm looking at it from a perspective from within Ubisoft, right? So take that with a grain of salt as well. But if you have to create like realistic assets in like, wait, let's go back. So within the banner of Ubisoft, right? And then the custom assets will be done by outsourcing studios probably, or the art teams within the studios, right? So I don't think the production cost will be drastically more. The only thing that you can't use is just stuff from like previous previous entries from like games, right? That's an interesting one though. I would actually love to see like the production breakdown of that, because I do believe that you're right to a certain extent, but I also think there's a different way of doing it, where again there's more leniency within the art direction of those games. So you can get away with maybe even setting up like procedural stuff, whereas to get like a really realistic looking procedural stuff set up is probably like way trickier than like procedural looking stylized rocks, for example. Did a quick Google of the new IPs coming out, and it really looks like the majority are stylized. Oh, that's awesome. Could that also be because there's no major AAA stuff coming out? Because a lot of it has been released in the last year? I don't know, maybe it's also like a thing of the time, right? I'm not sure. I don't even know, like, I'm so bad at keeping up with games even though I'm in the industry myself. Yeah, this is some good stuff in chat. I love all these different perspectives. I need to ask more stuff instead of just rambling all myself. Because there's some really interesting thoughts in here too. All right, let's go back to the question though. Let's see. I think we answered it, right? I think. Let me go through it again. Most AAA. On the other hand, we still. Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Because I would love to see, like, again, I would love to see smaller teams working on more interesting games, even within banners like the bigger AAA studios, right? Where they have like smaller, I don't know, what would you call them compared to like AAA teams? Like maybe incubators, where they have like smaller teams working on like new art styles, new techniques, new whatever. I think that's already what we're kind of seeing, right? Within Ubisoft, there's probably like a couple of companies that have done stuff before, like Immortals Phoenix Rising or whatever. I keep forgetting about the name because it changed, right? But you all know the game that I'm talking about. Or also Grow Home, that was made by the studio in Newcastle, I think. They set up like a dedicated team for that. So I think that's the stuff that I want to see. Just like more interesting perspectives, like more smaller agile developments too. Yeah, more risk. Well, yeah, it's also, I get why they can't do it in like the major AAA releases, right? Because I mean, you don't want to, how shitty as it sounds, like how, because I love the game myself, right? You don't want to be in a position from like CD Projekt Red at the moment, even though the games sell like crazy, right? But imagine if it didn't sell, like you put all your eggs in one basket, like it might turn out really bad. Yeah, exactly the Havoc too. But that's where having these smaller incubators set up, having like smaller teams like working on new ideas could be really interesting. Because then you still have the massive teams working on the stuff that like the big franchises, right? The big franchises, right? Like the Assassin's Creed, the Far Cry's, or whatever. But then have some smaller agile teams that are doing more innovative stuff, like try new what is it, techniques and workflows and technologies coming out. And honestly, I think Ubisoft does a good job at that, looking at it objectively. It's because if you look at the stuff coming out, they have some interesting stuff that usually, in most cases, even flies under the radar. Like they have some cool VR games out there. They have some interesting like battle royales that are like trying to, like Hyperscape, right? That was like trying to do some new stuff as well, like player engagement and really going into that. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, like Disney shorts, people testing new innovations. Yeah, that would be cool. Would love to see more of that. But that's also, I mean, it's also fine if AAA doesn't do it, right? There's like a massive indie space that's already diving into that stuff anyway. I think AAA can also just learn from like the indie space too. And I think they're also doing that though. It's just, it needs to be adapted for like a bigger audience in most cases. Yeah, this is some good shit though. All right. Let's talk about the next question. This is a question from Anonymous, and it's a really important one. So let's dive into it. How would you solve being assigned a lead that doesn't listen to your feedback and assigns you horrible tasks, and in general mismanage you to the point of seeing no choice but to leave the studio? Yeah, I read this before. I mean, like half an hour before we started. And this is a really important question. How would I say it? Like, I see your career development as like playing a game, right? And usually what you do is play the long game. So in this case, it might be tricky that you have a lead that doesn't listen to your feedback, assigns you horrible tasks and whatever. And I think it's important to really pick your battles in that case and not fight on like every small detail. That is because I always try to reflect stuff that I can do myself to sort of ease the communication between both parties, right? That's always what I'm trying to do. Like, I don't have any control over what that person is doing. I can only control myself and how I behave. So I would probably try to understand where he's coming from, why he doesn't listen to your feedback, and then maybe also be, like I said before, picking your battles a bit, where it's like, okay, it's a horrible task, but I mean, it's still work. It might not be pleasant. It might not be the most interesting thing that you can do, but I mean, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet, so to say, and try to execute it to the best of your abilities. And then maybe, hopefully, if you do that kind of stuff enough, it will like smoothen the relationship a bit, where you have the opportunity to speak up a little bit more, or like say, look, in like a certain case, you can stand up for what you want to do, or like maybe bring up a solution to the situation. I'm trying to talk really general here, right? Let's have a look, because I think I think personally, from what I've seen and from what I've done myself, is that people tend to go into this spiral of not talking about solutions enough. They only talk about the problem, and then, oh, the problem is you, and the problem is you, and then the other party comes back with like, no, the problem is this. I think you need to look at it from a different way and talk about solutions instead of problems. So that, yeah, because especially this is about the first part of that question, right? When he doesn't listen to your feedback, maybe you're also delivering it wrong. Maybe you need to work on like giving feedback. Because again, this is always what I do, right? I always reflect stuff back on myself because that's the only thing I have control over. But that being said, on the other side, I also know that it can just like eat up, like a lead up to nowhere, right? You might just end up talking to a wall and nothing changes. Like even if you're there for like a year or like 2 years or whatever, you don't see any progression in it. I would try to bring that up to the production manager, maybe. Someone else that has like some control, some control in the situation, or like some impact. Maybe talk to them, like see if they can help, see if they can mediate with that situation. But even then, like if that doesn't help, I mean, no choice but leaving the studio. It already sounds like you're set on picking that choice anyway. So sometimes if you have to do it, you just have to do what you have to do. But yeah, I would always reflect it back on myself and see what can I do, what can I improve, and maybe I can play his game with him, right? And then try to get on better standing with him, while him or her. But yeah, man, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. Because if it is general mismanagement, then you can't even go to someone else, right? You can't really go to like the production manager and talk to them and see if they can smooth it out. Because if it's so rampant in the studio, maybe it is time to leave and look for like another studio. It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one for sure. Because sometimes you get to a point where you exhausted all the options that you don't really have a choice anymore, right? And it's just best for your sanity to just look for a different studio. What do you all think? Like, what if you have a lead that doesn't listen to your feedback and assigns you horrible shit all the time? What would you do in that case? If someone is just straight awful, do they last long? I mean, yeah, they can. There's no denying that. I mean, that's what you're seeing with these harassment cases, right? In bigger studios. I mean, I think that has it all in there, right? It sets like a precedent for what some studios, like how long it can last in certain studios. It's kind of negative to say it like that, right? But I think what is happening though, I think people are more critical and more aware of what's happening in studios, where I think over time we're gonna see the willingness to let that stuff happen deteriorate, because people are gonna notice patterns of bad behavior, like even like smaller impacting behavior, right? like power plays or whatever. It doesn't always have to be linked to sexual harassment in this case. It can also just be someone abusing their power. But yeah, they can. I think over time, people are gonna be more aware of what's happening. People are gonna be seeing the signs quicker and then speaking up quicker as well. So I think we're on a good path. And sometimes you need that kind of shock to happen. I got lost Sif. Oh, thanks for the follow, by the way. And welcome to Twitch. I'd say the same. Do your job, stay professional, work on your personal growth as an artist, and look for the back door when the next opportunity arises. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the best thing you can do. Because that's also a good point. Stay professional. Staying professional is always a good mantra to keep in mind. Because look, honestly, like in every workspace, if you're working with like other artists or in a creative field, there is going to be friction. Because there are going to be differences in opinions. There are going to be things that people don't agree with, and I think that's normal. But at least if you can talk it out, if you can be professional about it, and get to like mutual ground, so like a common understanding. I would even say that a lot of people don't even get to talk it out because they don't wanna have that uncomfortable chat about it. And I get it because I've been in positions like that too. But what I always do is I think about it for, I don't know, like a week. I think about it on and off, and then I'm like, okay, like if this is gonna keep frustrating me, I'll have to speak up. And if it doesn't really matter, then I can just forget about it. And I have spoken up about that stuff, and it is uncomfortable as hell to do it. But it always led to like a common ground, like common understanding, just talking to people. Even though you might, how would I say this? You might not like the end result of that conversation or like the impact that is going to have on you personally. You kind of understand the reasoning behind it. And then you can get into a mindset, or like at least I get into a mindset where it's like, okay, like this just needs to get done. I now understand the why behind it. And that also makes it reasonable. Like I can listen to that and be like, okay, yeah, I can see it in the long term that we have to do this now because else this is going to impact this and this. It's really hard to tell. In 99%, they have either a chip on their shoulder for some reason or there's some miscommunication going on. Yep, miscommunication is a big point. Like I just mentioned too. If it's the first time, there's really nothing you can do. This is so highly situational that I find it almost impossible to give actual advice. I agree. That's also why I had to keep thinking about what I was saying about this. Because it is highly situational. And that's also why a lot of people probably won't agree that I reflect all that stuff upon myself. But I mean, for me, it's more important that I learn something out of it than I try to force learnings upon someone else. That's how I kind of see it. Because I'm trying to become better. And if that person is not open to becoming better, that's their own choice. Even though it might suck, right? It might push you out, or it might destroy some professional relationships. But I mean, in the end, it's their choice. And that's also where the communication part comes in again. Like if you can be really open about that and just have them in a meeting or like in a personal call and say like, look, I gotta be really open. I find it really hard to like talk to you because you never, in this case, what was it? You don't listen to the feedback that I have to give or like I have to offer. And I mean, this whole situation is super uncomfortable to begin with, right? But it also depends on how you bring it up. Maybe that person doesn't really, how would I say it, like isn't really receptive to you just setting up a meeting and say like, come on, we're gonna hash this out. Maybe there's something else going too. Yeah, that's where, coming back to your point, the havoc too, it's just like highly situational, right? I'm trying my best to give like some actual advice. Most of my leadership, or like, well, quote unquote leadership stuff, I get from Jocko Willink. He's like an ex Navy SEAL, and he now does like leadership training and also has a podcast. And it's also where, I don't know if I had a book here. I think it's on the other side. The book is called like Extreme Ownership. And that's basically where I got this philosophy from, where if something goes wrong, you always take responsibility. Because I think in the long run, it just makes you a better person. If you say like, okay, like even in that situation where this went wrong, it's my fault because I didn't communicate like the limitations to it. What is an example that I can give? There is a recent example for from our challenges in the Beyond Extend community, where we were trying this thing out with a lead position, and I think we set up like the wrong barriers for that lead position, where the assumptions for the actual lead were wrong, were like way over scope to what we had intended for that quote unquote lead position, because we were just thinking about like something small. So that is a thing, like even if people started reflecting it upon that lead, the person that was the lead in that position, I don't look at it like that. I look at it in a way where I was at fault because I didn't set up the parameters for a lead consistently enough, or like up so that they're easy to understand. So that's how I look at it. I look at most situations like that. Let's have a look, right? They sound like a person that won't take a talk positively. Yeah. But it sounds like a toxic situation that I tried somehow to get out of if the chance presents itself. Ah, damn, there goes my plan of toughing it out until they're gone. No, I would probably tough it out until I get a ship title, then dip. Yeah. I think that's a good way of looking at it. Even though I always have this lingering thought in the back of my head where I'm like, okay, I might get out of this situation, but what if a person that doesn't have the opportunity to get out and he's stuck in that situation for like way longer than I have? Maybe I can at least like nudge it a little bit in the right direction, where even on like the exit talk that you might have, I don't know if every company does that, you can give the feedback of like, look, I've had some issues with my lead in this case, not being open to feedback. I tried communicating it this and this and this time, wasn't really seeing any change, and this is my eventually this is why I'm making the decision to leave. But it shouldn't come to that point without some conversations happening in between. I think, as tough as it is, you should be open about talking about it, and talking to HR, or like talking to a person that can mediate and just help you out with with that situation. Because I don't want people to bottle it up and then like in frustration just leave that company, and maybe even the industry, because that would be unfortunate. I think we can all make the industry a little bit better step by step. In a situation like this, it's always about power. Yep. It sounds like Anonymous is probably a junior or doesn't feel like they have a lot of wiggle room. In that case, yeah, toughen it out. Strategy might be more realistic in the end. It's tough. It is tough. But I honestly think that even if you are in a junior position, you have something to say about it. Like your seniority doesn't really matter when it comes to people being a douchebag in the team, right? But yeah, it is a tough situation. I hope that this helped though. I hope that we could give you some advice, offer some insight. Rasmus, thanks for the follow, man. Anyway, we got another question from Anonymous. This one is a little bit more lighthearted. What is your favorite Ben and Jerry's? I gotta go with Half Baked. It's so good. I think it's because I can't choose between cookie dough and brownie, so I always take Half Baked because it's the best of both worlds. What's everyone else's favorite? I would assume that cookie dough, or what is it? Cookie dough or I just said it, like brownie. If they're probably on the top of the list, right? Caramel Sutra. No, I'm not really a fan of caramel. Americone Dream. Oh, but this is also where it gets interesting. I talked to oh my god, I still remember when we did that podcast. So we did like a podcast episode. I think it was like, I don't know, episode 5 or 6 or whatever with William. And then after the podcast episode, when we recorded it, I think we went on to look at all the flavors that America had compared to like the European flavors. It was crazy, man. Crazy. So many different choices. I still remember we actually talked longer about Ben and Jerry's than we did talk about the podcast at that point. Like it was ridiculous. Because I've never heard about Americone Dream? What is that even? What is that? American Dream? No. Ben and Jerry. Americone Dream. Yeah, it's crazy. What is in it? Waffles, caramel, chocolate. Oh shit. Waffles. Oh man, these things are crazy, man. Plant-based. Wait, where does it have the actual ingredients? Oh, there we go. Shit, man. Imagine you're the guy who has to come up with all the Ben and Jerry's flavored names. That's crazy. What would your perfect ice cream flavor be called? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. What would it be called? I'm not a sweet dude. That's the issue here, I think. Like, I don't really... Timothy's fries. God damn it, man. What, have like Ben and Jerry's with fries stuck in it? That's probably the worst kind of thing ever. Sugary spaghetti. That has a nice ring to it. Sugary spaghetti. Man, I promise you the American will eat it up. What the oh my god. It has like a fry core in the middle. Oh, just like condensed fries. Oh my god. This is horrible. I would definitely try it. I would try it and then probably just put it away again. People that dip their fries in their shakes? What's wrong with people? What, are we talking about milkshakes? Yeah, right? Oh man, talking about milkshakes, we used to go to like an American diner place in Cambridge when we were living in the UK, and we used to go there like at least once a month, I think, just to get what are those cookies called again? What is that milkshake called again in the UK?
Oreo milk.
Oh, the Oreo milkshake. Yeah.
Ed's Diner.
Yeah. Oh, that was so good. Beyond Extent ice cream merch. Let's fuck go. What? Just a tub of Ben & Jerry's with Beyond Extent on it. I missed the Ben cookies. I don't know if you tried it. No. Like Ben & Jerry cookies? Or Ben's cookies. Oh, I see. Ben's cookies. No. I don't think so. Do they have one in Cambridge? Let's have a look. I think they do. Oh man, when is that from? No, they they opened up a Ben's cookies when we left. Ice cream merch would be awesome. Oh, so many good inspirations for merch. Just have like Beyond Extent ice cream, Beyond Extent cones. Tim and Will's. I understood. Yeah, this is cool though. Some good Ben & Jerry's flavors. Yeah, I think let's have a look at the chat, right? Because I think this is all the questions that we had from the community. So let's have a look in the chat. Let's see if I missed a question in there. So if you have any questions for well, anything really. It's an AMA, right? So just fire away. Ice cream merch would be awesome. Ben and Willie's. I don't know. We might need to do something about the second name. Maybe Will's is better than Willie's. I don't know. I do not want to know how that packaging is going to look. They must have an entire team coming up with like Ben & Jerry's flavor names, right? Oh wait, did I miss one? Hey, okay. Let's have a look. Let's drag this over. So let's start with Rasmus first. What studio in the UK would you give the most street cred? In the AU, in Europe. Would you give the most street cred? Oh, man. That's an interesting question, right? Because I would probably assume that most people would have said CD Projekt Red before Cyberpunk. So now that made me rethink what I would say. Maybe Larian Studios? It's also because I'm pretty familiar with them. They're like a studio in Belgium. And they do like the Divinity Original Sin series. They're working on Baldur's Gate now. I think they have a really good reputation of building those RPG games. Yeah, the public representation is on point. Exactly. And it seems like they still have that small company feel around it, where the CEO is still like on occasional live streams. And the last live stream that I saw like a while ago was with like the alpha of Baldur's Gate, I think, and he was sitting there in like full armor. he was sweating because he was just like wearing a full set of armor. Like it was ridiculous. Like, can you think about like another CEO that would do that kind of stuff? But I also think that they're still fairly underground. Like they don't have this massive what is it like? This massive public appeal, or like they're not on like a massive scale yet on like public what is it, like public opinion or like just general knowledge. Like I don't know that many people that know about that studio. Yeah, I think they're doing pretty good. I think they're like the underdog at the moment, even though they're working on some pretty cool shit. Maybe the Baldur's Gate announcement like boosted that up. Maybe calling them the underdog after doing Baldur's Gate might be maybe like a little bit of representation. Yeah, they're not super mainstream. Exactly. So yeah, that might be my pick then. That might be my pick. What would yours be, Rasmus? And like everyone else? Because I'm having an issue to think about like other studios that are like really like in the AU. Because I'm thinking about Arcane too, but they have, I think the main production hub is in the US, if I'm not mistaken. Not sure. Yep, I agree. Yeah, Respawn in America. I'm a big fan of them too. Even, yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Guerrilla Studios. That's a really good one. Yeah, that's a really good point, Rasmus. Yeah, because that's probably still. Huh, if we compare them, if we put them into the list, they might be on the top of their game right now. I think so. And I think, oh god, I don't want to jinx it, right? I think the next game that they put out, the next Horizon, that they have like a good reputation of just putting it out when it's done, right? They had some problems with Horizon bugs on PC, but other than that, super solid stuff. Yeah, I played it on PS4. That's the whole reason why I bought a PS4, and I played only 2 games on that. But man, that was such a good game. Amplitude? I've never even heard of them. Amplitude. Let's have a look. This is some good shit. Dude, Horizon on PS4 was insane. I know, man. It was such a good game. What did they do? Amplitude is now part of Sega West, which also comprises Creative Assembly. Creative Assembly is also a good one, if you're into strategy games. Well, not only strategy games, they also did Alien Isolation. That was a really good game too, even though I didn't play it for too long. But that's also like a, well, oh god. Well, we're talking about AU, right? So unfortunately, they don't make the list anymore. I mean, we don't have to be so strict about it, which is kind of unfortunate. But yeah, their game scared me too much. Couldn't finish it. Yeah, I think I got to my first encounter. I was like, nope, not doing this. But I know that they added like, what is it, like a passive mode? So you don't get attacked or something. I still need to go back into that game and just play it on passive mode just to check out the cool shit that they made. Same as Paradox. Yeah, it's good to remind ourselves that there's so many dope studios in Europe, right? Because we never really take the time to reflect on that stuff. It's like, oh, hey, how are you doing? But yeah, what does Amplitude make? What do they do? Let's have a look here. Games. Humankind? I've never... Can you say... No, I can't. I can't do that. I'm not gonna reveal my shitty German on stream. Oh, they made Endless Legend. Oh, okay. Yeah. Dungeons of the Endless. That makes sense. Glitchy Punk, how are you doing? Let's have a look, right? There were some more questions in here too. Cairo mentioned that Nikita and I have a good question discussion on the Discord. Let's have a look. Just a quick one. Might be an interesting discussion. I've seen a lot of takes on Twitter in the past couple of months with a statement, quote, realism or photorealism is boring from a lot of artists. Obviously, they are welcome to their own opinion and promotion of more stylized stuff would be great, but I wonder if it were the reverse and stylized was called boring, what do you think the reaction would be? And why are the two cases treated as differently, do you think? It's just because people have like a limited understanding of art, I think. Like realism or photorealism is boring is such an empty statement. Like it's such, like if you don't like it, that's fine. But making it boring, generalizing it like that is just totally invalid. I mean, there's so many hot takes on Twitter, right? Like on social media in general, where it's like, oh, why do we even talk about this? Like it's just going nowhere. Let's see. But if I wonder if it were the reverse and stylized was called boring, what do you think the reaction would be? I would think the reaction would be a bigger outcry, because I think Twitter is a platform where more smaller indie devs and more stylized. From what I've seen and from what I think, stylized always has this attachment of more personality. Because people see it as like people driving their own art style. So if you start attacking them for that, you would get like a really big outcry, I think. Whereas with realism or photorealism, it often gets equated with people just copying or like photo scanning or all that stuff. So they don't see it as like a massive artistic, how would I say it? Like a massive artistic attachment? Even though it's totally irrelevant. Like there's still as much work that you put into it. Especially when it comes to like photorealism or realism. Like if you see the people that are pushing like the barriers of like photorealism, like they put a lot of stuff in it too. It's kind of like, man, what was it like a couple of years ago when people started giving concept artists shit for using photos? It's like, who cares? Like the end result. Stop talking about like what they use. Like it's not about the kind of tools. Like it's about the end result. Can't we just like celebrate both things? If you don't like realism or photorealism, then just don't react on it. And that's totally fine too. But I think as an artist, you should be able to appreciate the two of you. Like if we're gonna put them in like two camps, right? There's way more than just the two, but it's sort of like growing up, and I only listen to metal, and like all the other stuff is bad because it's not metal. It's like now you've grown up and you start appreciating like other types of music because you're in like a different mood. And like, oh, I like synthwave now, and then because I'm in this kind of mood or I need to get shit done, I listen to more metal. I kind of equate it to that, where I think it's healthy for an artist to have an appreciation, like a wider appreciation of like different kinds of styles, different kinds of influences. Because if you just say like, oh, realism or photorealism is boring, then where are you getting your source material from? Where are you getting your references from? If you're only taking it from games, or if you're only taking it from stuff that is already stylized, then you're not looking at the source material, and you're gonna have like a digestion of an already digested piece, because they probably looked at the realistic part and then they were like, oh, but what if I turn it into stylized? And then you get some unique results. Because I would say it all starts with realism or like a realistic inspiration. And then if we're talking about environment art, right? You start digging into like the roots of that inspiration. Like, what are the cultural impacts? Like, where did they live? Like, how does that impact like what they did? And then you can like extrapolate like all the different kinds of style that you want from it. Let's see. Digita said, I hate it when I see this type of stuff. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but why share it? Is to make someone feel bad about something they love. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, yeah, that's also just the trick with social media, right? It's not about supporting each other. It's about getting likes and clicks, and people have this negativity bias that the negative stuff will ring harder than the positive stuff, unfortunately. So yeah, this is a good question. I think the equation to just like your music choice when you were like 16 and only listening to this because it's the best thing ever is kind of like the best comparison that I could make. Just a little bit childish. Ryan, what do you think is the most difficult aspect of working in game dev? Oh, well, if I have to if I have to link it to like one thing, it's setting up a barrier between, how would I say this? Like not letting your passion for the art get abused. And like abused is a strong word in this, but like sometimes I get really attached to stuff way more than I actually should be, because how would I say it? Like in the end, it's more about the bigger picture. It's more about like the bigger team decision around it than your artistic opinion on that one thing. I would definitely say that is the most difficult thing. Like separating. I don't want to fully separate the passion from it, right? Because it gives you like a really good boost. It gives you like that hunger to work on stuff because you're passionate about it. But you have to set up a line somewhere where you just have to make the conscious decision of like, okay, like from this point on, I'll need to detach from it. Yeah, don't get too attached, exactly. Because if you're working in the studio, you don't have like the creative control. Well, eventually, like if you're not an art director, you don't have like the full creative say about it, which can also be like really annoying when you have this thought about something and you're like really sure that this is probably the best way forward, but then the art director says like, no, we can't do this because of this. That might just like stomp on your passion just a little bit and your attachment to it. And then sometimes it's just about letting go and just being like, okay, this is a fight that I don't really want to fight, and just detach from it. Yeah. Attachment is a source of all suffering, according to some wise people. According to some wise people. Sounds like such an ominous statement. Because if you get invested too much, everything not going your way will hurt. Yep, exactly. It's also like building up a plan, right? You can build like a meticulous plan. Didn't want to say Buddha, but yeah, Buddha. Well, it's true, right? Like even if you make like a meticulous plan and you plan out like everything for you, let's say your environment, and then you get to this point where it's like, oh, this is not gonna work. Some people get really demotivated by that because it's like, oh, I built up this super watertight plan and now it doesn't work. You always have to be careful to leave some inconsistencies in there. Hey Rosh, how's it going, man? It's been a while. So yeah, let's have a look, right? So yeah, definitely the most difficult aspect is just picking your battles, so to say. Getting too attached, not attaching enough, like balancing that. I got lost if. Here's one question. I've worked in indie studios, 10 to 20 people, and so far I feel that the busy scheduling I feel that the busy scheduling we always are up against hinders the learning research time during company hours. Oh yeah. How do you feel that the balance in bigger companies, or do you think it's completely based on the type of position you're on? Well, we do get there's no dedicated time to do research, right? Or like learning. Well, except in our studio, we do have like the TGIF. We have this concept on Friday afternoon, so you can spend on like learning or like teaching yourself new skills. But that is also like a unique situation in our studio. I'm pretty sure that not all the Ubisoft studios do it. So we might be pretty unique. But that being said, not all people make use of that time because they feel the pressure of deadlines. And I've been really rigorous with that time, and only in like times of drastic need I'll sort of sacrifice that time to then work on like the project. The busy scheduling we're always up against hinders learning research time during company hours. Yeah, I would say learning most of that stuff I do outside of work, but research time should definitely be included in company hours. Like researching like how to, I don't know, how like locations in this part of the world look, for example. I don't think it's based on the type of your position you're in though. Because like all seniority levels, all positions are gonna be busy with stuff. Normally in bigger companies you have the pre-production phase where all the research and all the stuff gets compiled for then the actual production people, in my case environment artists, to then step in, look at that research that has been done before, and then turn it into something actionable in a game. But yeah, sometimes I think, well, this is my perception from like indie studios, right? Because I never worked in an indie studio. You have to wear more hats. The pressure is probably bigger than in bigger studios because in bigger studios, yeah, you can. There's always people that can like fill in if you get sick or whatever. So there's like a safety net there. So I would say from my limited understanding, right, comparing indie with bigger studios, especially my limited understanding from like indie, is that the balance seems to be better in bigger studios because there's more people to create that safety net. That's an interesting question. I would love to talk to you about that more and just dig into it a little bit. Let's have a look. Don't wanna miss anything here. Are you sad that you can't experience Far Cry 6 for the first time? How do you feel about experiencing games before they are released from a gamer's perspective? This is an interesting question. But unfortunately, I can't answer that question truthfully without breaking NDA, so I'm not going to do it. I hope I need to write this down. Actually, I'm going to copy this over and set myself like some sort of reminder for when the game is out, where we can speak a little bit more freely about what we did and what we worked on. Because I can't do that now. I'm sorry. Especially if I wanted to be like really open, and give like an honest answer. The thing that I could say is that let's have a look. I can probably talk a little bit about like experiencing games before they are released from like a gamer's perspective. I wonder if that helped me be more compassionate towards bugs. I wonder, because like a game development, there's I mean, so much stuff is changing constantly. So much stuff is happening. Sometimes when I think back at at my work at Frontier Developments, there were moments where I was like, oh my god, is this gonna work out? I've always had these moments where I was like, ooh, I don't know if this is gonna work, but then in the end it always came together, which is sort of like the beauty of games too. But yeah, that's probably all I can say. I do wanna dive into this question. I think it's a really good one, but I just can't answer it at this moment. Let's see what else is next. Back from a 2-week break, back to work and life. Oh, you have to get out of your bed. Oh man, that was so difficult. That was so difficult. Getting out of bed like after such a long holiday. Fran, why did you move to Germany? Because of the opportunity of Ubisoft? Tell us a story. So the complete story is we were living in the UK. We were thinking about moving to like a new place anyway. So we kind of were talking about it on and off. We kind of had this idea that in like a, I don't know, like a year or like something more, we would move. We would move again. We had some shit with our landlord and our apartment. And after like some trouble, some water leaks and some damage and like a whole bunch of bullshit, us not paying rent and all that stuff, they basically gave us a notice. And they said like, okay, you got 2 months of well, you got 2 months to move out basically. So I came home with that email in my head, and I basically told to my girlfriend like, okay, like this, let's just take this as an opportunity, turn this negative thing into something positive, and just be like, look, I'll start looking for a job, like not announce it or anything. I'll start preparing all the stuff that I need to do, start looking for a job, polish my portfolio a little bit. And then when the first month ends, like with our 2-month deadline that we had to well, we were getting forced out of the apartment. So after the first month, I had everything done. And I had written like a resignation letter for Frontier at that point. And my idea was to look for a job within those 2 months, and then we would just move to the next thing. I do not recommend you to do that, because that was probably like a really stressful time. But after that first month, I sent in my resignation. Like I had a chat at work. I was like, this is happening, being really open about it. And that's when I started posting stuff on Twitter, started like spamming my portfolio. I was looking for a new job. There were a couple of companies that I had talked to. So I did, like, apart from like my normal day job, I was also like traveling to other places to do like interviews and all that stuff too. And then in the end, it was between a studio in the UK or like a studio in Germany. Like I got contacted by one of the producers at Ubisoft Berlin, and they were starting up like a new Ubisoft studio. And I was like, oh my god, like within Ubisoft, like a new studio, that's like a unique opportunity. So I went there, I explored the city a bit, and then where do we go from there? Like oh man, I still remember the interview when I sat in that room, and they were basically like at the end of the interview, like everything was going good. I had a good feeling about it. They had a good feeling about it too. And I was like, when can I expect like an answer? And they were like, oh, we'll give you like an answer by the end of the week or something. Like it was the beginning of the week. But because I also had like an application with another studio, they wanted me to give an answer the next day. So I basically told HR at Ubisoft, I was like, yeah, I have to apologize, but I'll need an answer by tomorrow, basically. I'm super surprised that it worked out. And they gave me the answer by the next day as well. But I still remember sitting there, like in Berlin, by myself as well, because my girlfriend was still in the UK, just waiting for an answer from Ubisoft Berlin. Yeah, eventually I got it. So that was probably like really stressful. There's like a bunch of stuff that, like, if we really want to go into it, like it's like a bunch of stuff that happened in between as well. But I would say definitely for the opportunity of like Ubisoft, and then also because I already did like a couple of art tests for Ubisoft, never really made it through. I saw this as my bigger break to get into Ubisoft, especially within like a new studio, because I joined before the official opening of the studio. So we had this moment, like my first day at work, I was setting everything up, and they told me that the CEO, Yves Guillemot, was visiting the next day to like look at the studio and like just meet all the people. So my second day, we just had this chat with Yves Guillemot, which was pretty bonkers. I think in total the studio then was 30-ish people, and I think now we're getting close to like 200-ish or something like that. It's hard to keep track with like a work from home. It's been pretty crazy. But yeah, it was purely for like the opportunity within Ubisoft, and just like another country as well. It's always exciting to just move to another country and like compare countries and kind of figure out where you want to settle at some point. Yeah, this is a good question. Oh man, I kind of want to do like a whole section about this, just like going into detail and like what happened and all that stuff. That would be kind of interesting to just do like a, I don't know, like an episode on that or something. Bikes. I heard of someone write a book. No. How to get famous in 10 steps. I'm gonna write one of those really, what are they called? Like, clickbaity books. How to get into Ubisoft in 3 easy steps. Oh my god. I heard of someone leaving CD Projekt Red and saying she also left because she wants to experience the games from a gamer's perspective and from a developer's perspective. 10 rules that will change your career. Oh my god. Yeah, I can get that though. I can get that, Bikes. But I think the damage is already done. Especially for me, right? When I'm working on environment art, I know that I'm like, environment art is the stuff that I love to do. So I will always like overanalyze all the stuff that I'm playing anyway. So when we talk about that, yeah, there's definitely like a big difference, because I mean, all the times I spent looking at textures, like looking at seams, like looking at the textile density of like foliage, like looking at, I don't know, how stuff is behaving in the world. I can definitely get it, but I don't think I will ever go back to like being able to not see it like that. So that's what I mean with like the quote unquote damage is done, right? Because I can probably never go back to just looking at it with like non-developer eyes. I can get why people do it though. Does she I'm wondering in this case, because she left the games industry to experience the games again from like a gamer perspective, I also wonder if it's too late, if that makes sense, where she can't really see the games in like a gamer perspective anymore. That would be interesting to follow up upon. I would be interested in hearing that. Write a book. Get an answer within 12 hours from you. Oh. Be an amazing artist. Apply at stuff. You're hired. Step 2 to 10. Apply at stuff. Oh, okay. Yeah. So not the entire industry. Oh, so it's specifically because she loves the games of CDPR that much that she doesn't want to be attached to them anymore. Or like not see them, not spoil them for herself. Yeah, that makes sense. I've always wondered about this. Like, say you have like your favorite game of all time. Let's say in my case it's like Fallout 4, and then you get to work for Bethesda, which should be your dream job then, right? Will it destroy that love for the game because you can see all the stuff that has to be done behind the scenes to get it working? I often wonder that, and I think the answer might be yes. So that's why I'm also hesitant to like work for those dream studios, if that makes sense. I think it would. The novelty is gone. Yeah, I think so too. There's probably something to that. I always think that if it's good or bad, I'm working on. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it's an interesting question, right? Because I think, I mean, for sure, it would be pretty awesome to work on like your favorite franchise ever, right? That would be like a big thing. That would be, if you're looking at the percentage of people that make that get to have that choice, that would be awesome. But then I wonder what the effect of it is. I think it's just a question of like making the separation, like seeing the game for the game and then seeing the development for the development and like compartmentalizing it. But say if I was to work on like Fallout 4, and if I'm working on the main game, like not any of the DLCs, I would be, I don't know, it's so big. I would probably not go to my own locations, that's for sure, because I know how it works, I know all the ins and outs, but I would still be interested to check out the other locations that other people built. Another reason why I'm happy I didn't get hired at Turbulent. I'd probably end up hating Star Citizen just from staring at it all the time. Well, it also depends on what you would be working on, right? I don't know what Turbulent is specifically working on, if they're working on the open world or if they're working on, what is it, Squadron 44? Because that's where it gets interesting. Where, say you work on Squadron 44, like the single player aspect of like Star Citizen, but then you still get to see all the cool art within that single player aspect. But then you can still enjoy like the open world aspect or like the universe outside of it. That would be pretty interesting. Making the worlds for the MMO part. Yeah. Because that would be a pretty sweet deal. If say Star Citizen was my favorite game of all time, and then I can consciously pick where I want to work on. I wouldn't pick to work on like the open world section because that's the stuff that I want to explore for myself. I would probably pick to work on like the single player aspect where I can still get familiar with the workflow, still look at all the cool stuff they're doing, but then don't get any spoilers for like the exploration, which is like a big reason for me to play those games. It's probably even more intense when you're a game designer, deciding how the next entry of your favorite game should be like. Yeah, exactly. I think you could get the imposter syndrome from working on your favorite game. Nah, well, I mean, you could. Definitely, you could. But in my opinion, like, if they hire you, you're good enough for the job. And that's kind of where it ends for me. There are definitely times when you have like those small doubts when it's like, oh my god, I'm surrounded by all these amazing people. Like, what am I doing here? But yeah, I tend not to spend too much time thinking about it. I could see it though. I could definitely see people getting like imposter syndrome from that. Was for the actual planets in the major cities of planets. I do think flying a ship you made will be pretty cool. Yeah, if we go back to that Star Citizen example, I would probably also... Man, that's such an interesting point. Because I would probably also hate it to not be working on the open world. Because I would love it to work on like the stations or like some of the planet side stuff that they're doing. And like dress it all up, make like everything look nice, tell some interesting stories there. But then you don't also want to spoil it for yourself, so it's like, oh my god. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It would be interesting to talk to, because there are definitely people in the industry that work on their favorite game of all time, and that they're still so passionate to be working on it. Like, how do they compartmentalize it? That would be pretty interesting to talk about. Just work with blindfolds on, easy. Easy. All right, people, we're getting close to 2 hours. This was a really good AMA session. I really appreciate you all being here. But it's time for me to go and grab some food and then get into some personal work. I mean, if you're building Legos with your kid, you also have fun playing with it afterwards. Yeah, but like the emotional attachment to Legos is less, right? Like I have no issues with like destroying something that I made with Legos. I'm not gonna destroy or like delete my personal work. That's for sure. Would you play Far Cry 6 when it's released? For sure, 100%. This is not because I'm biased. I just wanna see how it's gonna turn out and just like explore everything. I'm interested. For sure. Destroyed my ultimate Lego build and ruined my day. Alright, people. Oh, send some burritos over, Raj. They're gonna be all moldy when they finally arrive though. This was awesome, people. It's always amazing to have you all in here sharing some good mental thoughts, good ideas. This was honestly like the most interesting AMA that we've done so far. So have a good Sunday, everyone, and yeah, as always, I'll be here next Sunday, same time, same place. So if you want to check it out, come and join me again. Have a nice Sunday, everyone. See ya!